Imagine this. You're sitting in a restaurant, ready to enjoy a meal, filming a casual food review. Everything is calm, but then out of nowhere the wall explodes, and a car comes crashing through, sending glass, debris, and tables flying. All of it caught on camera. This isn't a scene from a movie. This is the terrifying reality faced by a group of food vloggers in February 2025. The crash was so violent, it left the internet asking one question. Was this an accident? Or is there more to the story? The footage went viral almost instantly, but the real question is, what happened behind the scenes? Was the driver at fault, or was something more sinister at play? What role did the food vloggers play in this chaos? Stay tuned as we dive into the terrifying moments, the mystery, and the aftermath of the shocking crash that shook the world. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The vloggers Sarah, Mike, and Rachel had been working together for almost 3 years. Their food review channel, Tasty Trio, had become one of the most popular among millennial foodies, drawing millions of views on YouTube and social media. What set them apart was their genuine enthusiasm for every bite they took. Unlike the usual scripted content many creators offered, their audience found authenticity in their reactions, making them beloved figures in the food vlogging world. On the morning of February 22nd, 2025, they were buzzing with excitement. They had been invited to review a local seafood restaurant in downtown Los Angeles, a place that had recently been gaining traction among food critics. The restaurant was known for its signature seafood pasta, a dish that had garnered quite a bit of attention in food forums for its innovative twist on a classic recipe. The 3 vloggers arrived early in the afternoon to set up for the review. The restaurant, a small but cozy spot tucked away on a bustling LA street, had an inviting vibe, soft lighting, wooden tables, and an open kitchen that allowed diners to see the chefs at work. The chefs seemed like they were passionate about their craft, and the restaurant had an air of quiet elegance that put the vloggers in a good mood right away. "All right, guys, let's do this," Sarah said, adjusting the camera and focusing on the lens. "I'm excited for this pasta. It's been blowing up on food blogs." "Same here," Mike agreed, tapping his fork on the table. "I'm not one for seafood, but this place looks like it's got something special." The vloggers quickly settled into their routine, prepping their equipment, checking the camera angles, and reviewing their talking points. Rachel began jotting down some notes for the review, while Sarah greeted the waitstaff, and Mike prepared to sample the food. The entire restaurant was quiet, with only the sounds of dishes being plated and glasses clinking in the background. It was the perfect setting for a smooth food review. After a few minutes of settling in, the waiter brought over the signature seafood pasta. The dish was gorgeous, with perfectly cooked pasta, creamy sauce, and a variety of seafood arranged beautifully on the plate. The vloggers couldn't wait to dive in, excited to share their thoughts on this trendy new dish. "All right, moment of truth," Mike said, raising his fork toward the camera. "Let's see if this lives up to the hype." As they began eating, the mood was upbeat. Sarah commented on the rich creaminess of the sauce. Rachel praised the perfectly cooked shrimp, and Mike couldn't get enough of the delicate balance of flavors. The camera kept rolling, capturing the genuine enthusiasm on their faces. They could already tell this place would be a hit on their channel. The restaurant was still buzzing with a quiet energy, but something in the air began to shift. The sounds of busy traffic from outside grew louder. The muffled conversation from other diners faded, and suddenly, the sharp screech of tires sounded from the street. It was distant at first, almost imperceptible over the noise of the restaurant. However, it quickly grew louder, more intense. Rachel paused, looking at Sarah and Mike with a quizzical expression. They had all heard the sound. "Was that a car?" Rachel asked, a bit unsure. "Could be," Sarah replied, glancing toward the window. The noise intensified again, this time with an unmistakable screeching sound that sent a wave of tension through the air. For a split second, they all froze. And then, before anyone could react, there was a massive crash. It was so sudden that it almost didn't make sense. The entire front wall of the restaurant collapsed in a loud explosion, and the glass shattered in every direction. The car had plowed straight through, sending chairs, tables, and broken glass flying through the air. The vloggers, in sheer disbelief, had just enough time to duck under the nearest table before the full impact took place. The air was filled with the sounds of shattering glass and debris falling. The impact was so violent that it shook the entire building. For a few moments, everything felt like it was happening in slow motion, like time itself had stretched to make room for the chaos. "Is everyone okay?" Mike shouted, barely able to hear himself over the crashing sounds. He looked around, his heart pounding in his chest. The car was half inside the restaurant, its front end crushed into the dining area, just inches away from the vloggers. The sound of screams echoed through the restaurant as panicked patrons scrambled for cover. One man shouted, "Get out! Get out!" as he pushed past others, trying to reach the exit. The vloggers, still holding the camera, began filming the aftermath. The once peaceful restaurant had become a war zone of debris, broken glass, and torn-up furniture. It wasn't until a few seconds later that they realized how lucky they were. The tables had been knocked over, and the food they had been enjoying moments earlier was now scattered across the floor. Despite the chaos, no one seemed to be seriously injured, but the shock of the incident left everyone on edge. The vloggers crawled out from under the table, shaken but unharmed. They stumbled toward the exit, still filming. They could see emergency responders pulling into the street outside, sirens blaring as they prepared to help. The smell of burnt rubber and smoke filled the air as they made their way outside. As the vloggers stepped outside, they were met with a scene of utter chaos. The once tranquil streets of downtown Los Angeles were now filled with emergency vehicles. Police cars, ambulances, and fire trucks had swarmed the area, the flashing lights casting a red glow over the sidewalk. Paramedics rushed into the restaurant to assess the injuries of the patrons, while police officers began securing the crash site and taking statements. The vloggers, still in shock, made their way to the curb, away from the wreckage. Their camera was still rolling, capturing every moment, but their minds were racing. What had just happened? How had they managed to escape? One of the first things the vloggers did was check in with each other. "Is everyone okay?" Mike asked, his voice filled with concern. They were shaken, but it seemed like they were all physically unharmed, with only minor cuts from the glass. "I think we're okay," Sarah said, adjusting the camera. "But what about the others in the restaurant?" The patrons who had been dining at the restaurant had begun to exit, many still visibly shaken by the crash. A few had sustained minor injuries from flying debris, and paramedics rushed to check their conditions. The vloggers, seeing the carnage inside the restaurant, realized how fortunate they had been. "We need help," Rachel said, but Sarah quickly reassured her. "They're being taken care of. We just need to stay out of the way." As they filmed the aftermath of the crash, the vloggers found themselves becoming an unintended part of the news story. The footage of the crash was now being shared everywhere. Social media exploded with reactions to the incident. The video was quickly dubbed the Food Review Gone Wrong video, and it began trending on various platforms, especially on YouTube. It wasn't long before the footage went viral, with millions of people watching in disbelief as the crash unfolded in real time. As the emergency responders worked to secure the scene, the vloggers were interviewed by the police about what had happened. The police were eager to understand the sequence of events that led to the crash. The vloggers, though still shaken, did their best to provide the most accurate account they could. They explained how they had been filming when the screeching tires and the sound of the car crashing through the wall interrupted their meal. They had ducked for cover just as the car tore into the restaurant. The police were immediately suspicious. The crash was violent, and there were too many coincidences surrounding the incident. They began to ask more detailed questions. Had the driver been speeding? Was there any indication that the driver had lost control? The vloggers, still processing the shock, couldn't answer these questions fully, though they mentioned hearing the car tires squealing before the impact. As the police began gathering information from witnesses, the story became more complex. The driver of the car was a middle-aged man who appeared to be dazed but not seriously injured. He was quickly interviewed by the officers, who noted that he had no visible signs of intoxication. The driver claimed that his brakes had failed and he had been unable to stop the vehicle in time to avoid the crash. He was cooperative, but couldn't explain exactly what had happened. The car had skidded out of control, he said, and before he knew it, he had crashed into the building. Mechanical failure was an early theory, but without a full investigation, no one could say for sure. As the news spread, people began to speculate about what had caused the crash. The viral footage of the crash was everywhere, on social media, news outlets, and blogs. Viewers across the world were left with many questions. Was this truly an accident, or was there something more to it? Some viewers were quick to theorize that the driver might have been reckless, either speeding or distracted. Others suggested the possibility of criminal negligence, wondering whether the car had been in need of repairs that had been overlooked. Meanwhile, a small group of conspiracy theorists started to suggest that the incident had been staged, an elaborate hoax for viral fame. The theories were wild, but they spread like wildfire. The vloggers, meanwhile, had become overnight celebrities, their lives now intertwined with this bizarre incident. Their footage had shocked the world, but they were still trying to come to terms with the fact that they had been involved in such a dangerous and unpredictable event. As soon as the video footage of the crash went viral, the story took on a life of its own. It quickly moved from a local news incident to a global sensation. The vloggers were suddenly thrust into the spotlight, and their social media accounts exploded with followers and messages from fans and strangers alike. They were praised for their bravery and their ability to keep filming during such a chaotic and dangerous event. Yet, with all the attention, there came an influx of criticism as well. The online world was split into two camps: those who admired the vloggers for their professionalism and those who accused them of being reckless. Some argued that the vloggers should have immediately helped the injured patrons instead of continuing to film, while others believed that their footage provided vital evidence in the investigation. The criticism didn't stop there. As the story began to dominate the headlines, news outlets dug deeper into the history of the restaurant, the Cecil Hotel, and the driver's background. Speculation ran wild, and soon, the crash was no longer just about a terrifying accident. It was about public safety, restaurant security, and the potential failure of emergency preparedness in places of business. The vloggers, who had always been lighthearted in their reviews, found themselves facing a harsh reality. They were now the subject of intense scrutiny. They received hate messages, many of which questioned their ethical responsibility as content creators. Why had they continued to film instead of helping? Could they have prevented further chaos by acting differently? "Why didn't you stop filming?" one comment read. "You should have been helping people, not making a profit off of their fear." But there were just as many messages of support. Fans rallied around the vloggers, praising them for their calm in the face of chaos. The video, now viewed by millions, had become a testament to their professionalism and their genuine passion for documenting experiences, no matter the outcome. The restaurant, too, found itself under the media microscope. It had been a beloved spot for many in Los Angeles, but now questions about its safety standards were being raised. How had a car managed to crash through the front wall with such ease? Were there enough safety precautions in place to protect diners? The restaurant's management promised to work on improving security, but the damage to its reputation was done. The driver of the car was charged with reckless driving and vehicular damage, but many continued to question whether there was more to the story. Was this a simple mistake, or had something more serious caused the crash? As the weeks passed, the vloggers found themselves at a crossroads. They had gained fame from the incident, but they had also gained responsibility. It was clear that their audience had expectations of them, and they began to question what kind of impact they wanted to have going forward. "We can't just continue doing food reviews after all this," Mike said one evening as they discussed their next steps. "We need to use our platform for more than just entertainment." They agreed. The crash had taught them important lessons about public safety, emergency preparedness, and the importance of being socially responsible as content creators. They realized that they could use their influence to advocate for change and raise awareness about safety standards in public spaces. They decided to take a break from their regular food review content and focus on educating their followers about these issues. They reached out to the restaurant, And together they launched a safety campaign that highlighted the importance of building safety and public awareness. The vloggers also began collaborating with safety experts and mental health professionals to discuss the importance of being prepared for emergencies and how everyone could take steps to stay safe in unpredictable situations. The restaurant, too, made significant changes to its security protocols, installing better barriers and reinforcing the structural integrity of the building. The owner made a public statement, acknowledging that more needed to be done to protect the customers and thanking the vloggers for helping bring attention to the issue. As the vloggers returned to their regular content, they found that their audiences were more engaged than ever. They had turned a tragic event into a positive movement, and their newfound purpose became the driving force behind their future content. Months later, the vloggers reflected on how far they had come. They were no longer just food critics. They were advocates for safety and mental health awareness. Their journey had taken them from shock and chaos to purpose and impact. The viral video of the crash had launched them into the spotlight, but it was the lessons learned from the incident that had truly shaped their future. They had taken a terrible event and used it as an opportunity to create change. Their followers now saw them as more than just food lovers. They were seen as responsible influencers with a mission to do good. The restaurant, too, had undergone a transformation. It had weathered the storm, made improvements, and was now one of the most safety-conscious establishments in the city. It had learned that even the best-laid plans could go wrong, but that didn't mean they couldn't bounce back with better practices. As they sat together at their favorite cafe, reflecting on the crash, Sarah smiled and said, "We turned something tragic into something meaningful." For more gripping stories of viral incidents, true crime, and real-life change, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more stories of impact, resilience, and unexpected journeys.